Welcome everyone! Today I will show you how to pair animations between two or more characters to play finishing move like this. As you can see, these two characters sync up animations very well. So I will show you how to do that. First thing, let's go into the plugins panel. Make sure you have these two plugins enabled in your project. The first plugin is the Contextual Animations, and the second plugin is the Motion Warping plugins. If you don't have it, make sure you toggle this and restart your engine. The second step is to create a contextual anime scenes. Contextual anime scenes here. Name it CAS underscore test. This asset will tell the game system how to pair the animations and what animations to use. In this tutorial, I already have two pair animations here to do a finisher move. One for the attacker and one for the defender. If you don't have these animations, feel free to go on file. There's a lot of finishers animation set out there for you to select. After you create a contextual anime scenes, open it. Focus on the right panel. You can see there is a roll asset here that is empty. We will create that. Go back to your scene, open Milasius, search for data asset, type roll. You will see contextual anime roles asset here. Create that. Name it DA underscore CAS underscore roles. So basically, this role data assets will specify the roles. The roles are just names or identifiers that you or the system use to call these characters in the scenes. So basically, if I'm making a finisher move, I will have two roles, which is the attacker and the defender. So when I'm mentioning attacker, I'm mentioning this blue guy, which is the player, and when I'm mentioning defender, I'm mentioning this yellow guy, which is the AI or the enemy. So let's go into the role assets and define two roles with the corresponding name that I just said, which is attacker and defender. And because they are characters, make sure you enable its character is true. For these two specific fields, you can go into your character blueprints, open capsule components and copy the values here into here. If you use the default values, just leave it as it is. The same goes for the defender. And for the mesh component part, you will go into your character blueprint again, select the mesh, and copy whatever value that you see of the location and rotations in here. One note is when you're copying the z-axis of the locations, make sure that you also plus 90 units into here. So 90 plus minus 90 is 0. This to make sure that the root in the preview scenes doesn't go down. So just leave it there. After you set it up, go to the contextual anime scenes, go to role asset and assign the data asset that you just created. Now we have to set the primary roles. So the primary roles is the actors that initiate and managing the state of the contextual animations. In this situation, the attacker will be the person who initiate the attack and hold all of the informations in which if the animation has finished or not. So we choose the attacker as the primary role. And for the override preview data, we will add two elements, one for each role, attacker and defender. This helps you to render the actors inside the preview. We'll choose it to be the skeleton mesh because this is a character, and choose the character that you want it to be. In my case, it is SK Mannequin. We don't need to set up the preview anime instance for now, and do the same for the defender. reset the scene and save. And for the next step, we will be creating a new anim set. Click New Anim Set. An anim set is a set of configurations that we have to set up for each roles that we defined earlier in your data set. We have defined two roles, attacker and defender. And now we will have to assign the animations for each of them. Assign the attacker animation montages and defender. For the section names, we will leave it to default. And for the movement mode, so basically it will set to whatever value that you set here whenever the character is animating the contextual animations. So usually I will set up the movement mode to flying for better synchronization. So let's assume these are the sync points. And the defender has to move over here to start animating the contextual animations. So let's imagine there is a gap here. So when they move to the sync point, the defender will fall down and the animation will not sync up perfectly. So setting the movement mode to flying, it will negate the gravity, so the defender can keep animating with the attacker, and after the contextual animation finish animating, it will set the movement mode back to default, so it can fall down naturally. For the optional fields, we will keep it as false because these animations are required to play in the contextual animations. And for the random weights, we will talk about later. After you're done setting up the animations, click OK. We can review the animations on the left panel. Press space to play it. We can see that these characters are not syncing up very well in terms of positions and rotations. So let's fix that. We only need to choose one character to fix the rotations and locations, and it will sync up with the other characters. So click on the defender montages. See the mesh to scene fields. We will change the locations and rotation fields here to match with the attacker. So let's try it out. I will input 165 units into the y-axis and reset the scenes. It's all about trial and errors. So let's play it. You can see that the locations are syncing up correctly now, but the rotations are not correct. So click on the defender again. Let's rotate it to 180 degrees and reset the scene. Let's play it again. You can see now they are synced up very well. There is only one problem. If you use your left mouse button to drag the timeline around, you can see that these colliders are fighting each other. They should be overlapping with each other like this to be correct. To fix the collisions problem, we will have to set up the collision behavior. We have two options. First options are ignore actor when moving. This is a function in Unreal Engine. You can look it up online. So basically this option is it will allow only these two characters to be overlapped with each other. However, if there are another characters outside of these contextual animations standing in the way of these two characters, it will still collide with each other. So for more flexibilities, I use ignore channels to handle the collision problem. So basically, this allows you to set up channels for each roles to ignore. We will have two roles, attacker and defender. And now I will define the channels that these two roles will ignore, which is one static, one dynamic, and hold. The same goes for the defender. After you have done with your setup, reset the scene and let's check it out. As you can see here, these two colliders are not fighting up with each other anymore. They are ignoring each other. If you choose to ignore one static and one dynamic like I do here, make sure that you also set the movement mode that I said earlier into flying mode. Because if you set it to walking, the characters will fall to the ground because the ground is the one static and you choose to ignore them, so the gravity will pull them down. If you set it to flying, it will stay floating on top. And one more point that I want to mention here. Ignoring one static and one dynamics will have you out in the situation like this. If there is a small wall between the defender and the attacker, normally it will block the defender from coming to the sync point to animate with the attacker. So ignoring the walls, which is the wall static or the wall dynamics, will make the defender to come right through the walls and to the sync point to successfully synchronizing with the attacker. After you have done setting up the contextual animation scenes, go into your character blueprints. Make sure you have motion warping added in your character blueprints and also contextual anim scenes actor these components in order for the contextual animation scenes to work. So this is the code to have you test the contextual animations. I will walk you through. For testing purposes, I will only use the F key to trigger the contextual animations. You can use any event that you like to trigger them. I will use spear overlap actors to pick out an enemy to do a finisher. For this piece of code, it will create a contextual anim scenes binding. You will input your contextual anim scenes asset, this one that you just created earlier, into this, and then you're gonna make a map. Make a map, add another bin, and just fill in like the above. So for each of the roles that you define in here, you have to set up in this map. So for attacker, I will bind it with the player, and for the defender, I will bind it with the actors that I scan around the player. In order to bind in like this, you have to pass your actor to a function called make contextual anim scenes binding context. And after you create the contextual anim scenes binding successfully, you can start the contextual anim scenes using the contextual anim component, the component that I just told you to add to your character blueprints. Type start contextual anim scenes and then input the bindings. That should play the contextual anim sequence. Let's test it out. Go into the game, spawn the enemy, and press F. As you can see, there are no synchronizations between these characters. The animations play well, but the positions and the rotations are not syncing up. That is because we haven't setting up the motion warping yet. To set up the animation warping, you have to go in each of the animation montage to set it up yourself. Let's first go into the attacker animation montage. Under the notify tracks, add a notify state and type motion warping. Drag it up to whatever you like. After the end of the warping, the character should be standing right in the sync point. So basically I will just leave it right here. And then I will go into the right panel, change the warp target name to attacker. Because this is an animation montage for attacker. The same goes for the defender. I will add a notify state, motion warping, drag it to anywhere you like. and change the warp target name into defender. After that, go into the contextual animation scenes. Focus on the warp point definition fields. Let's create 2 warp point definitions for each of the roles and name it accordingly to attacker and defender. We will choose the mode to be custom for now. The same goes for the defender. Open up the param fields and set the origins to the defender. So basically, if you set the origins to be the defender will become a pivot for the attacker to come and synchronize with the defender. If you set it up to attacker, the attacker will become the pivot and the defender will have to move to the sync point, which is right here. But I like the defender as the pivot. So after you have done setting up with the warp point definitions, click update warp points. This is very important when you make any change in this. Update warp points, yes. Reset the scene and then save. We can go into the game to check it out. So I will spawn an enemy and then I will walk very far away. When I press F, you can see that the player characters will move close into the defender to animate. Even if I went from the back, it will try to move forward and then animate with the defender. If I set the origins to be an attacker, so now the defender will move to the attacker, not the attacker. As you can see, the defender is moved toward the attacker. This is not very ideal, so let's just leave it into defender. There's one problem with this. If I stand very close with the enemy and then press F to start animating, the animations play very well. But if I stand very far away and then press F, it will pull the player toward the defender, which is not very realistic. Even if I stand behind the enemy and press F, I will go through the enemy. This should not happen. So in order to do the checks, you will go to the contextual anim scenes, select the anim set that you want to configure. Make sure you select the defender to do some checks. Let's focus at the selection criteria fields. This selection criteria will help you to figure out should the system pick this anim set to play. Let's add one and select the cone. So as you can see here, if the player, the attacker, is inside this cone, you can mess around with the parameter. I will just leave it here. If the player somewhere between this range, then the animations can be played. So let's save it, go into the scenes, press play and test it out. If I am very far away and press F, nothing will happen. If I am from behind, press F, nothing will happen. If I at the front and in the reasonable distance, it will play. In the real-world use case, you should have multiple animation sets in a single contextual animation scenes file. To create a new anim set, just click on the new anim set button and do what I have done earlier. These animation sets is selected by the system using the selection criteria. The animation set only play if the selection criteria is passed. If there are multiple qualified animation sets, the system will pick out randomly based on the random weight of each clip. So if the animation set has more weight, it will be more likely to be picked by the system. The use of selection criteria is to make sure that the animation is playing in the right context. For example, with the front finisher, it makes sure that the attacker is in front of the defender. If you want to make a stealth finisher, you can set the selection criteria cone to face backward, like this. You can create your own selection criteria by create a new class and derive it from new contextual anim selection criteria. The plugin will also work with multiplayer, but keep in mind that any client can trigger the animations and send it to the server and then replicate to everyone else. There is no authorizations or security layers between the client and the server. Because the plugin is in the experimental stages, if you want to use this plugin in your multiplayer games and then ship it, you will have to override some of the code in the plugin, like in the project myself. So I will add some security features, server authorizations to this plugin in order for it to work with multiplayer. And that's wrap up the tutorial for today. Thank you for watching, and if you have some questions, feel free to ask me in the Discord server. See you guys on the next video.